what are your thoughts on if one understands the music, technique will follow? How effective is this approach? Very good question. Many people subscribe to this, but their playing is relatively colorless and one-dimensional because their hand hasn't received the right education. All the people who do this well, they went through a rigorous and long-standing education. They trained their hand to be able to respond to the demands of the ear. Now, arm weight technique worked well, as we've said, because the people that first applied to had really great fingers. They had done years of Haneau and all sorts of finger exercises. Later generations received arm weight training without the requisite finger action preceding it, and they just ended up with a kind of an inner touch. So our technique atrophied. And the trouble is, our ear then atrophied. And our ear stops searching for the orchestral sound. Our ear starts searching for the multi-layered sound full of colors, a differentiated one voice, because the hand can't provide it, and so the ear thinks it doesn't even know it's possible. So there was a corollary atrophying of the ear that went along with the atrophying of the technique. And that's why so much of our playing today is one-dimensional. So there are many pianists who have wonderful technique, and they can just respond to what their ears demand, and their hands do it for them. People like Trifonov, people like André Laplante, but they went through, as I said, a long, rigorous training. The Russian school is, of course, one of the most effective forums for this kind of training. So you'll see different variations of the Russian school. So people like Trifonov have a really wonderful technique, and they went through a schooling that gave their hands the ability to respond to what their ears are demanding. So the musical education was wonderful, and the technical education was wonderful. I had a woman very well trained in the Russian school, wonderful musician, wonderful facility, could learn pieces quickly, and a glaring hole in her technique. Her hip joint, the metacarpal phalange joint, was totally dysfunctional. And for years, she'd been wondering what the problem was. Nobody could tell her. When I showed her basically how this motion, the stand-up motion, must be present in everything she was doing, and it was grossly absent, she, in 3 days, transformed into a full-blooded, completely capable pianist. So you see, even in the Russian school, there are branches of the school where there's some missing pieces of the puzzle. And instantly, the ear cannot simply guide the technique, because the technique has not been trained to answer the demands of the ear. So what we're cultivating is a two-pronged process where the ear needs to be re-educated. The ear needs to understand the difference between a one-dimensional and a three-dimensional sound, and then the hands need to be trained. The senses need to be developed so that the ability of the hand to respond to the ear is there. So it's a long training. It's very athletic. Don't let anybody criticize you for saying that there's an athletic dimension to piano playing. Of course it's true. Now when people play athletically without an added artistic dimension, then it's terrible. But to try to play artistically without the athletic dimension is just as terrible. You need both. And to my mind, our ears have atrophied because of this atrophying in our technique, and it's by getting our technique back on track that we're going to open up our ears and learn to demand more of this wonderful instrument.